News Radio 840 WHAS. Good Sunday morning. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, here with you till the top of the hour. Joining us today, a host of folks who hopefully you know by now, starting with Randy Rocky, Swan Financial. They do a phenomenal job getting your loan to the closing table, and they've got great rates as well. You can reach Randy and his team at 645-0736. Also here, Lee Harris, legal counsel over at Limestone Title and Escrow, and you can reach her directly on her cell phone at 649-7964. My son Greg is back by popular demand, and Greg and I just back last week from a meeting with Barbara Corcoran up in New York. We'll briefly touch on that a little bit later on to tell you how that went. And then you can reach me anytime on my cell phone, 376-5483. The first thing we want to talk about this morning happens to be bed bugs. And a lot of people are a little bit concerned about that because there is a bed bug invasion in parts of the United States. And if you don't know, these little things, you can pick them up if you're traveling, especially a lot of folks who have been traveling this holiday, this summer, back in town. And there's a report out of who has the worst bed bug invasions. If I mention this city, folks, and you visited,
I'm gonna guess New York's high on the list because when I lived there, it was always on the list. It was always something everyone was bombing their apartments.
Yeah, it's a real problem. So number 10, and I'll go through this list quickly: Cincinnati, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Washington, D.C. In at number 6, Indianapolis. Baltimore at number 5, Detroit at number 4, New York City at number 3, Philadelphia at number 2, and taking the number 1 spot, Chicago. So the point
I expected the big cities, but not like the
little ones.
Every city in Ohio and Indianapolis. Yeah. I wasn't expecting those. They're too close to home.
So this was a bed bug contest, top 50 cities who might have bed bug problems. And for a second year in a row, Chicago took the top spot. That was done by Orkin. So the point is, if you want to read up on bed bugs, if you've traveled to any of those cities, or even if you've gone to other cities as well, you want to just keep an eye on it because it could be detrimental to everybody. Moving on, let's talk about questions. We're still doing our Zoom show, which means that if you've got a question, send me an email with a subject line saying radio question and put the question in the body of the email and we'll get it on the air. We start with Randy. This one's coming from Samantha, who wrote us an email saying her brother Steve is convicted of a felony and served his time. He's getting out of incarceration and wanted her to ask, is there anything that would prevent her brother from getting a home loan after he secures a job?
No, not at all. We're not allowed to do that and shouldn't be. Okay. If he comes back in the workforce, then he will be just a normal, it'll be a normal loan. So, yeah, great question. But, yes, there won't be any issue at all.
But he has to have a job, obviously. That's probably the only thing that would deter him from getting,
Yes, that is correct, just like anybody else, Bob. Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, good. All right. Well, that's good to hear. All right, Lee, Dee Dee has a fascinating question, Lee. She writes, I just read a woman bought a $19 million penthouse in New York City, and she's suing the real estate agency after she says they tricked her into thinking the building had a full-time doorman. So Dee Dee says that when she bought a brand new home here in Louisville, the builder promised upgrades like brick on all sides of the home. They only have it on the front, and granite countertops in the kitchen, but she didn't get granite countertops. So she's wondering, can she sue the builder? Much like the owner of this $19 million penthouse is suing the New York real estate agency for tricking that person. Thoughts, Lee?
Yes. So if there's some kind of writing that says there's going to be bricks on all sides, or if there's some kind of writing that says there's going to be this upgrade or that upgrade, and then the builder doesn't do it for whatever reason, either because they ran out of money and they decided to do siding because it's cheaper, or whatever the case may be, if you have a written, not a verbal or anything like that, not a text, but some kind of written contract or some kind of written, statement setting out what the property was supposed to include, then if you didn't get all of that, any of that, then you can bring a claim undoubtedly, there's probably a clause in the contract that says how you can sue. And under KRS 411, you have to send the builder a notice first and give them a chance to fix whatever it is that you're complaining of, and then you can bring your lawsuit.
I think the key words here, and Greg, jump in this because I know your wife, Casey, one of our top agents, deals with a lot of new builds. But in writing is key, and a text won't do, a verbal handshake won't do. And
no, I mean, all that stuff, especially with the builder's contract, I mean, you're going to go through sets of plans and initial off, especially if it's, more of a custom builder. Now, if it's a production builder, all that stuff, you're going to go through and sign off again on it's a very, there's certain production builders where you can only pick one certain paint. You're picking from siding, you're picking from 2 colors, you're picking from, maybe you don't even have the option for brick, but everything is going to be spelled out for you well in advance. And if a builder just completely goes rogue off the contract, first off, you're probably going to know it if you're paying attention to the construction process before it gets to be a problem. And if you're not, then get your agent involved, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are hard things to do after the fact, but it's going to be, a lot of times it's communication, and a lot of times it's the buyer signing or initialing things that they don't understand or didn't communicate with their agent or ask the right questions. But a lot of the times it's always going to be in writing. The builders deal with this lots and lots of times. They're buttoned up. That's what the legal stuff is for.
Gotcha. I think I'm also interested in the fact that there's a woman who bought a $19 million penthouse in New York City. Lee, I know this is not New York. You can't deal in New York law, but can somebody in general, if you buy regardless and you think that the real estate broker misled you by telling you there was going to be a doorman and there wasn't, is there legal implications here? Can you go after the broker or the real estate agent?
I think if there's an actual misrepresentation, I don't know how you could trick someone into thinking there was a doorman because you think that he would be there, when he came to see the property. But nevertheless, if they did some kind of real trickery to make her think that there was a doorman, and there should be, I guess, at a $19 million, apartment, but that's hard to quantify. What are the damages that what damages has she, been caused by the fact that there's no doorman? Right.
All right.
Yeah,
I found that fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We move on. Tracy sent me this email, Randy, and it wasn't your wife, by the way, Tracy. Hello, Tracy, if you're listening. She is wondering what is worse with interest rates now hitting about 5 and 5.5%. Is that what we're seeing? And what's worse for a first-time home buyer, higher interest rates or higher home prices? I know that's a tough one. While you're thinking the answer, I should tell you the nation is witnessing a housing recession. That's according to the National Association of Realtors chief economist Lawrence Yum, as existing home sales plummeted 20% year over year in July. That's according to, again, NAR data. In
certain markets, very important to say.
It's really, it doesn't affect prices. It's just the amount of home sales that are going on because there are fewer homes on the market and there's also higher interest rates. So let's circle back down to Randy because I wanted to give him a chance to think. Is it better to have higher interest rates or higher prices in purchasing a home? Is that a fair question from Tracy?
Yeah. So I think higher prices because, you always have a chance to option for a refinance. Also, like our adjustable rate ARM right now, NMLS number 26362 is at 4.25%, APR 6.2. So you have a 4.25% that's a 5-year fixed mortgage. So, to me, a higher house cost would be the worst of the two that you did.
Hopefully, like some people, you're getting saddled with both. But if you got to choose the lesser of the evils, right? You want a higher property value, so you have some equity in the bank, hopefully, rather than getting stuck with a higher interest rate. And hopefully, you can refinance when the market levels back out and all that stuff. But
right. And Randy brings up a good point about this ARM, the adjustable rate mortgage. It was passé when rates were really low, but now it's come back in and being touted rather heavily by a lot of people. If you want more information, we have a a website that you can go to, which will help you. If you want, you'll register and I'll get back with you. There's no obligation, no cost. Go to bobsellmyhome.com. That's bobsellmyhome.com. Will help you and get you through all this. There are ways to get around it. Let's go back to your questions. And this is for Lee. This is coming from Melissa. She says, I'm trying to sell my home with not a whole lot of luck. In the event I do, she's trying for sell by owner, which we in the business call FSBOs, but that's what she's trying to do it herself. She says she's not having luck, but if she does get a buyer, Lee, she wants to know what paperwork does she need to have to make a deal work? What would you suggest to her? Great question for her.
Okay, well, I think that first of all, you need a contract, that's binding, that has all the terms that she needs, like the price, the property address, the names of the parties, the closing time, whether there's an inspection or it's as is, possession, the main things that you need to know when you're going to transfer a property. She also should do a seller disclosure, whether she uses the state's form or her own form, because Kentucky law says whether you have your property listed or not, you have to disclose any of the defects that you know about and the repairs that you've done. So she would want that in writing so that the buyer can sign off on it. And also, if the house is built before 1978, she's required to do a lead-based paint form, which determines whether or not she knows of any lead-based paint in the home. So really, I think those three things would get her at least towards the closing table. But definitely, we get a lot of people who say, I'm selling my house and I'm selling it to this person for $200,000. And that's it. They don't have a contract. They don't have any of the terms set out. So whoever's going to close that deal definitely needs a written contract. And also your lender, if the buyer gets a lender, they're going to want a written contract as well.
Lee, would you suggest that folks who are doing this, like Melissa, go to like an Office Depot or off the internet, get these forms? Can they go to an attorney? I suspect an attorney is going to charge. Yeah,
they can go to an attorney. That would be if you don't have a real estate agent, that would be my first suggestion, is go to an attorney to draft up the contract for you. However, if you are just opposed to either one, then there are some good sites on the web that give you contracts. You want to probably choose a Kentucky one. There's sites where you can put in the state that you're looking at. Choose a Kentucky one. You can print it out. They might charge too, $15 or $20 or something like that. But anyway, yeah, just make sure that it has all of those key terms in it. And as long as you have those key terms agreed upon, the contract should be binding.
Got it. All right. We're going
Bob, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go right ahead. Go ahead.
Last week I was in a conference and was told, and I wanted to see if you think this number is accurate or not, 87% of all for sale by owners will eventually have a real estate agent take the listing because they cannot sell it on their own. Only 13% actually close as a for sale by owner.
Interesting that you
agree
asked
with that stat?
I actually do agree with that. In fact, I'll go one step further. FSBOs, again, for sale by owners, made up only 7% of home sales in all of 2021. That's the lowest share since 1981. That's according to the latest profile of home buyers and sellers from the National Association of Realtors. That's a stark contrast from 15 years ago when 12%, which is closer to the number that you heard, of sellers went FSBO during the 2006 housing boom. So, and I can't tell you why, other than the marketing is completely different now. We're into much higher end marketing. If you look at anything that Greg does for us, it's just unbelievable. So just putting the house on the market's no longer putting a sign in the yard, just doesn't do it. But that's a great question, Randy. Yeah, I would tell you. Yeah.
And I don't like to repeat very often. I just really am surprised that 87% in a hot market eventually have to have a real estate agent. You guys do a great job. I'm not downplaying that.
Right.
It's just that only 13% actually sell when you put it on as a first time owner.
Yeah.
Shows sincerely, it shows the stats that you should really just start out with a real estate agent because you get a higher price and all the above. After seeing that number, it was staggering to me.
And there's the one little caveat you mentioned briefly. is that the stats show that with a real estate agent, you end up making more money off the sale of your home than if you do by negotiating it yourself. But that sounds like a blatant commercial, which, let's face it, it is. But I'm just trying to couch it in the right terms.
No, I
here.
went through. I just went through the process with you.
Yeah.
Yes, if I didn't have a real estate agent, I would have had to get one.
Yeah, because there were some tense moments. I know. We're gonna take a break. Don't go away, folks. A lot more to come. Randy Rocky, Swan Financial, 6450736. Lee Harris, legal counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow at 6497964. My son Greg, who does our marketing, photography, does a great job with all of it, and so much more. And you can reach me anytime if you're thinking about selling your home or even buying a home. You can reach me at 376-5483. We're back in a moment on News Radio 840 WHAS. News Radio 840 WHAS. Bob Sokoler, the Louisville Real Estate Show, to the top of the hour. We will stay with you. And still with us, Randy Rocky, Swan Financial, 6450736. Lee Harris, legal counsel, Limestone Title and Escrow, 6497964. My son Greg, who does all of our marketing, photography, and so much more. And again, you can reach me, Bob Sokoler, at 376-5483 for free, no obligation, just a consultation, and we'll be thrilled to help you. Barbara Corcoran, my thanks to her. Greg and I visited her this past week. You want to tell them when we sat down at the table, the little discussion we had with regards to whether the pictures should be taken vertical or horizontal?
Listen, I know my audience. Let's just say for this audience, we still like horizontal video. For my audience, if you're holding a
vertical,
cell phone, likes vertical video. Barbara agrees. You know, you gotta have it both ways. That's why we do so well.
I shot video. I haven't looked at it yet, but hopefully we'll have it. I'll tell you when it's available and where you'll be able to see the behind the scenes, the making of the commercial with Barbara. All right, we move forward. Okay, Randy, Jackson sent us an email and says he's looking for a lender, but he wants to know what should he be looking for in a lender, and what information should he know to give the lender when he finally decides on the one that he wants to use to find a home.
Well, I think Google reviews are important, and then I think obviously service and rate are also important, and so I think that those are the three things that they really need to look at. And then after that, at that point, he would just fill out a link or an application. You press a link. Usually that's what most mortgage companies do now. And then they will give you a list of things they need. And it's usually pretty standard things.
I think you hit it on the nail, but going one step further, the service, that actually corresponds to a lender answering the phone when you as the client wants them or needs them, right? Because so many times you try reaching out to somebody and they don't answer the phone. You got to leave a message and things are piling up in your head you want to get answers to. So whether it's a lender or a real estate agent or a closing attorney or anybody in any trade, if you try to reach out and you don't get a response, and again, sometimes it takes maybe 5 minutes or so to get back, but if you don't get a response, consider moving on, right? Yeah. Yep.
Well, and that's very well said, Bob. And a lot of banks and all, and just the way they operate, it's 5 days a week. We're 7 days a week, as you know, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the world works anymore. And if you don't want to play in that sandbox, it's just really difficult to get the relationships, not only with the real estate agent, but also the customer. You just have to be there when they want you to be there. Yeah, and that's okay. We've accepted that.
we take calls into the middle of the morning, as I do personally. So
exactly.
Okay. 2 quick notes: if you'd like to see some of the videos that we produce for our sellers and buyers, you got to head to LouisvilleHomesTV.com. That's LouisvilleHomesTV.com. That's a redirect, take you to our YouTube channel. There's a lot of videos there. You'll see what we produce. And one more thing, if you want to sign up for our latest newsletter, we send the newsletter out every 2 weeks. All you need to do is go to WeLoveLouisville.com. And these are very timely topics about pricing, things to do to fix up your home. Again, that's WeLoveLouisville.com, and you can sign up and free and no obligation, as we say. We move on. Danny writes in that she is buying her first home. Danny and her agent crafted an official repair request, Lee, and this becomes an interesting point. After they did the inspection, But even though they submitted it and the seller had 2 days to respond, she says the seller did not respond within those 2 days. The repair request and the deadline passed. Now, what recourse does Danny and her agent have in terms of getting the response from her repair request?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I'm assuming she's in Louisville.
Yes.
And if so, she's probably using the Louisville contract just from Sokoler. And there is a new section in that contract, the inspection clause, which does address this pretty clearly and says if the seller doesn't respond within their time frame, then they have agreed to do all of the repairs that the buyer requested. So if you are a seller's agent or if you're a seller, you got to watch that time frame, because now Danny is entitled to all of the repairs that she asked for, whether they're a lot or a little. And the seller has already signed up on that, so they're obligated to do those repairs now.
And that's automatic, and there's no turning back. And what happens if the seller says, well, I don't care that it's in the contract. I'm just not going to make those repairs because I didn't want to do them. The buyer has recourse in...
Yes, if the seller is in breach of that section of the contract, and the buyer would have, yes, recourse either through getting money at closing or, obviously they could not close, which is not a good thing if the buyer wants the property. But they could also, have an escrow holdback where they get that amount of money to do the repairs themselves. But yes, they do have recourse if the seller doesn't do the repairs. It's just as if the seller had agreed to do them in writing.
Yeah, like mediation or arbitration could go that way as well, I suspect.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
it would have to, right? And thus, well, I'll stay off my soapbox, Bob, because you know how I feel about the forms committee and how they write these rules where people get defaulted into agreeing into paying thousands of dollars worth of repairs without an actual response, rather than the contract just being void, which is what it should be, in my opinion. But I digress.
Okay, that's another story for another day. But you have a good point there, and we'll move it forward. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Randy, Carmelo is a potential move-up buyer. He's considering a much larger home, and he's wondering, is there any mortgage out there that he can borrow as much as his house is worth? He says he doesn't have a whole lot of money to use as a down payment, but he'd like to borrow money against the equity in his current home. Thoughts on that? How would you structure that?
Yes. Well, you could go up to 90% with a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance. So we could keep the first mortgage and then do a home equity line of credit on his current property to put it for a down payment on a new home. But also, if we do a simultaneous closing, we can use, I know that gets into a whole different can of worms here, but we can also use that money for the down payment, whatever equity is on closing of the property, and then we can close his new property right behind it. But if he doesn't want to go that route, yes, we can use a home equity line of credit.
That's in place of a bridge loan, what we used to call a bridge loan in the industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we do offer bridge loans now. They're really they kind of lost their luster, but we can do that. But more usually it's more advantageous to do a home equity line of credit.
Gotcha. And is there a lot more money involved if you do a equity cash out against the home for down payment?
It's a lot less money than a bridge loan, which is why I'm saying they've kind of lost their luster. Just the closing costs and all that are much more attractive on a home equity line of credit.
Got it. All right. We have time for one more question. Lee, you take the honors for this last one. Katie had to move to Atlanta for a job and was planning to sell her home here in Louisville this summer, but lo and behold, she found out on a trip to Louisville that her son has moved into her house without her permission and by force refuses to leave. And she's wondering, how can she get her trespassing son out of the house? We've heard something like this before.
Oh, wow.
So that's a tough one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is tough. I've actually had two mothers in that same situation call me recently.
Wow.
So basically the first thing you have to do is to give them notice to quit. And typically that would be from before the first of the month, even though they don't have a lease. It's better to do it before the first of the month, giving them 30 days to quit. And in that letter,
you state, if you don't, I'm going to have you evicted. And then he sounds like he's not going to leave. And I'm assuming he's probably not paying rent since he wasn't, asked to move in there. So that's why he wants to stay.
Yeah.
But at that point, if they don't move out, you can file the forcible detainer action in district court, and they will not have a lease. So the judge will undoubtedly rule that they have to leave. After that, they have 7 days to leave, or the owner can put them out. I know that the added issue here is that it's her son, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But that's the legal way to do it.
So district court, do you need an attorney to file that if you're going to do it, or can you do it yourself as an everyday citizen?
If it's an individual, it's not an LLC, the individual can do it themselves.
Interesting. All right. We are just about out of time. Couple of things, notes, if you want to see the future of home photography, head to Louisville3D.com, where we've got some of the pictures, videos, and 3D tours that we do. Also, Greg, if people want to see what you're doing on Instagram with your feed, what's the easiest way? Because I showed that off and people are amazed.
Just learn how to spell our last name. Sokoler.
So go to Instagram.
Instead of Bob, just Greg. Sokoler on Instagram. You can do it you can just do a simple Google search.
Yeah.
It'll probably pop up as you put my name first. It'll probably bring your stuff up too.
Yeah.
It shows all of our stuff. But yeah.
It's pretty amazing. Up in New York this week at a dinner with some of my fellow agents, I was showing off what Greg does, and they're all going, hey, can we bring him with us? I go,
well,
no.
Listen,
no.
Lots of people can do this. The secret is, the sauce is, it's you and me, and the fact that, as I keep it in-house so that we're on top of things. We got tight turnaround times. I can expel our clients' best wishes through the team.
Video and pictures. Got it. Out of time. Randy Rocky, Swan Financials, 645-0736. Thank you for being here, along with Lee Harris, Limestone Title and Escrow, 649-7964. My son Greg, who does our marketing photography. And you can reach me, Bob Sokoler, anytime to come out, pre-consultation. We can figure out a plan. No obligation. 376-5483. We'll see you next Sunday on News Radio 840 WHAS.